Hey guys, Argent here, the reactionary review of The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. So I know it's kind of weird considering I haven't reviewed the other movies yet. I do have a review of Hunger Games which I'll upload in a day or two, and I do intend to do the others. It's just I saw this movie, so I want to kind of do this while it's still fresh in my mind. And more people often watch these if it's a new release. So, this movie picks up where the previous movie left off. Katniss had just almost been murdered by Peeta. I still think Peeta's a lame name. I don't know why they couldn't just call him Peter. I guess they're trying to be cool. Yeah, so he had been reprogrammed by the Capitol. The Capitol has the ability to brainwash people. They gave him like LSD or Tracker Jacker venom, which kind of made him like it's kind of like the MK Ultra program or something like that. They are gonna have angst for the rest of the movie because Peeta tried to kill Katniss, and Katniss is his one true love, and Peeta is Katniss's one true love. So let's see here. So then we get kind of where the film starts to get interesting. First off, I suppose I should just say as a general point in this film, there's no reason for this movie to be presented in two parts for your viewing displeasure, as I like to call it. There is no reason for Deathly Hallows, for Breaking Dawn, for any of these movies to be presented in two parts. It's a travesty that they keep forcing this shit down our throats. And I think this movie's a prime example of it. You could probably cut about half this movie, and it wouldn't really impact the plot. They're obviously trying to pad this film, despite the fact that it's over 2 hours. This movie could have easily been 90 minutes. If we wanted to cut a bunch of scenes and maybe add a couple replacement scenes that are shorter, you very easily could have made this in the previous movie one film. But they didn't want to do that because they're money-grubbing bastards. Peeta is really not going anywhere. He's kind of receiving therapy. Because he's out of commission, Katniss wants to get revenge on the Capitol. So they go to District 2. District 2 is where the Capitol's main fortress is, where most of their weapons and a lot of their military supplies are hidden. The thing is, though, that District 2 is full of Capitol loyalists. A number of the districts are actually loyal to the Capitol because they're industrial districts and they're actually not treated particularly bad. However, like all democratic movements, part of democracy is killing, capturing, or forcing your views on people who don't want democracy. You see, freedom of choice is not a part of democracy. So District 2 is basically invaded and destroyed by the rebels. They trigger an avalanche which basically buries the fortress except for one tiny tunnel that the civilians who are working in the fortress can get out with. And Katniss gives some like big speech about how they're slaves to the Capitol, and that they shouldn't be loyal to their country, and that basically she denies them agency. Basically she says, you guys can't make your own decisions. I'm Katniss Everdeen. I'm special. Even though you support President Snow and you support all this stuff, you aren't allowed to. So like, you know what, you're right. One person though has some balls and he shoots her, but unfortunately she's wearing armor, so it doesn't kill her. So Katniss spirals into depression. She approaches President Alma Coin, played by Julianne Moore, who's leader of District 13. It's kind of weird seeing this before part 1, so I'll explain. Hopefully I will have explained who she is by the time I make that. Basically, she's the president of District 13, which is pretty much the wealthiest district. It was the one that during the Civil War, the Capitol was incapable of taking it out and devastating it like they did the others because it possesses nuclear weapons. At least that was strongly implied. So they have most of the weapons, etc. They, however, do not use many of their troops during this war, preferring to let the other districts deal with it and arming them with stolen weapons. The idea being that when the Civil War is over, District 13 can establish itself as the new capital. So let's see here. So Katniss begs the President Al McCoy to go and kill President Snow, um, who they've decided to put the entire blame for this war on, because that's how things work. President Snow is able to fight the entire war by himself. No one else is involved with the war. The districts didn't decide to revolt. Um, the capital didn't have a certain way of life. There's no such thing as kind of collective group identity. All that matters is President Snow is evil, and we're just going to blame him for everything. So Katniss wants to go kill him because she blames him for the deaths of various people she loves, for the Hunger Games, even though he wasn't the one who implemented them, and for Peeta being brainwashed. So, after that, we have the wedding of Finnick, who's one of my favorite characters because he actually has a personality, unlike 90% of the cast. Gets married to Annie, who's a rather gorgeous redhead. And they kind of have a traditional Irish wedding, which is kind of cute. There's no priest, of course. There's nothing religious about it because this is a post-Christian world. Post-political, post-Christian world. So Katniss decides to sneak aboard a plane while everyone's busy with the wedding, so that she can go to the capital and fight on the front lines because she still wants to kill President Snow. She makes it there, and the president, played by President Coin, realizes that she'd look really bad if it was admitted that Katniss ran off and went rogue. So that being done, President Coin forms an all-star squad of the strongest people that the resistance has, and their job is just to shoot propaganda. They aren't really intended to fight, yet they send them into battle without any escorts, and there's only like 12 of them, and they don't give them any heavy weapons. So despite being this kind of elite squad, they really kind of send them into what's the purpose, because they send Peeta to be with them, despite the fact that he's still under brain control, to try and kill Katniss. It's widely thought that President Coin wants to kill Katniss because she's worried that she won't endorse her, and she's really the only remaining person with enough political power to challenge her. So it turns out that when they were invading, the same game makers who created the Hunger Games set up an array of traps throughout the city, including automated machine guns, flamethrowers, explosives, whirling blades, all that fun stuff, which slaughters the invading army. So Peeta's assigned, despite wanting to kill Katniss. The captain of the unit tells them to be careful because Quaid may see her as a threat. So let's see here. So as they venture into the capital, they're injured by a hidden pod. The commander of the special unit dies. A series of other traps go off, including an avalanche of black ooze.
Mom?
So they briefly hide from the oil, but peacekeepers, which is the name of the government troops, bomb their holdout and kill a couple of different members of the elite squad. So the Capitol broadcasts a message where President Snow basically just brags that he's finally killed. So they near Snow's mansion, and the team decides to venture into the Capitol sewers. So sorry about that. So they don't run into the various pods that have been set up. Around this time, Katniss lies to them and claims that President Coin gave the squad a special mission to assassinate the president, President Snow, leader of the Capitol. Katniss talks to the squad, and they reveal that they knew the whole time that it was a lie, and they want revenge as much as she does. They go underground, and we get a long, boring portion of this movie where they just kind of go through tunnel after tunnel, sewer after sewer, and then they get attacked by like these things that kind of look like xenomorphs, or kind of look like the eye thing from Pan's Labyrinth. And Finnick gets killed because of Katniss's inability to lead. And a bunch of the other members of the party get killed. That happens. Katniss uses some bomb to kill the rest of them. It's kind of an okay action scene. It goes on way too long, and this whole part of the movie just drags. You may not know, but we're like an hour and a half into this movie so far. So they reach the surface. They're chased by peacekeepers. Another squad member gets killed by a pod. So they take refuge in a shop with a resistance member. So Gale talks to Peeta. Gale being an irrelevant character who was kind of Katniss's childhood love interest, who's in love with Katniss, but he's kind of a douche. He doesn't really matter. He's just kind of another bland, obnoxious character. He's kind of like someone took Katniss and Peeta and mixed them together into a black hole of blandness, and that's Gale. So he's Katniss's other love interest because it was necessary to have a love triangle, because every teen romance fiction has to have a love triangle. So our heroes finally reach the surface after a mind-numbing, what feels like an hour at least, trip beneath the Capitol, being chased by mutts, etc. Fennec's dead now, just after he got married to his red-headed waifu, and that's just kind of the way things are. Under Katniss's continually incompetent leadership, the crowd is, generally speaking, getting killed off. So they're staying at a resistance member's basement. Peeta and Gale have a heart-to-heart where they reference the love triangle. Gale points out that one of them will probably die by the time that this conflict is over, and Katniss has to choose between the two men that she loves. Well, the man she kind of loves and the man she has a mixed relationship with, who she's been leading on for years. So, Gale thinks that Peeta has won her over. Peeta thinks Gale has won her over. Gale eventually remarks that deciding which one she can't live without is Katniss's problem and not theirs. Peeta says you have to assassinate President Snow or else no one's death will mean anything, except for the fact the war's basically over at this point. So Snow announces that the rebels have invaded the capital and welcomes the refugees to his mansion for food, shelter, and medicine. With the traps deactivated so that they can get there, Katniss and Gale pose as refugees to get access to Snow. And finds the peacekeepers taking capital children to provide Snow with a human shield. Snow's fairly smart. So a bomber flies overhead with capital markings and drops the same kind of support pods that were given during the Hunger Games. The support pods turn out to be bombs and explode. A group of rebel medics who are there for some reason outside the mansion, how they got there without being shot, I don't know. So they reach there and only to see the bombs explode a second time and kill all the rebel medics, including Katniss's sister. Her death is pretty cheap. It's supposed to provide pathos. Prim is basically Katniss's morality pet. Prim has just as little personality as her sister, and no one really gives a shit that she dies. So the bombs basically make it look like Snow killed his own people, so the remaining capital fighters put down their arms. Katniss is in a state of mental collapse due to her sister's death. She is able to speak with President Snow, who tells her that he wasn't the one who did the delayed bomb attack that killed so many civilians, but that it was actually President Coin, and Katniss believes her because that's the way Coin is. Coin announces that the elections have been suspended for the foreseeable future. She also announces that they intend to have a new Hunger Games, this time with capital children, because otherwise there would just be too many people to execute. So most of the people vote yes to that. Katniss says that she'll vote for it if they agree to let her execute Snow. So the day of the execution comes, and Katniss shoots President Coin instead of President Snow, and President Snow, whose health is in severe decline, laughs himself to death / is killed by a mob. She killed President President Coin because she feared that she'd be just another dictator. So then let's see here. So Katniss is pardoned for her crime, claiming that she's mentally unstable. She goes back to District 12. She marries Peeta, and they have kids. Let's see here. So that's pretty much Mockingjay Part 2. It's a completely unnecessary film. The fact that I've gotten through the plot of this movie in less time than does something to how much of this film is padding. So let's just do a bit more analysis, shall we? So President Coin's death is kind of a bad idea. After Snow died and after the Capitol's regime collapsed, realistically, she was the only person who could hold things together. To my mind, Civil War is pretty much inevitable at this point. You see, as repressive as the Capitol was, they kept things going. All the districts are so specialized that they can't exist on their own. The various districts produce one thing and one thing only. And they require a centralized system to redistribute things. Like Katniss's district only produces coal. It doesn't produce clothing. It doesn't produce food or any of that stuff. It requires the capital or some form of central government to redistribute resources. With the capital completely destroyed, most of the country's infrastructure in ruins, and the only remaining person who would be strong enough to keep the system going and have the resources to do so dead, the country is likely to face starvation, civil war, and complete and outright collapse. With the death of the capital, it's also quite likely that Panem will collapse, and the districts will eventually become their own countries, which, as I said for reasons previously, will probably be just as poor or more poor than they were previously. Famine seems more or less inevitable at this point in time. I think it's also important to note that the whole principle of self-determination, which they keep shouting, didn't apply to the Loyalist districts. The Loyalist districts were invaded, completely and utterly crushed, and forced to join the rebellion. Likewise, self-determination did not apply to the capital, who was not given the option of merely accepting the loss of of the rest of Panem and continuing as an independent state. Do you think that these people will be allowed to vote differently in the upcoming election? No, they of course will not be. Because that's kind of a principle of all these democratic books. No one's ever allowed to vote against democracy. No one's able to ever vote against the new system. So the rebels' victory ensures that there will be an era of civil war, starvation, genocide, and the complete collapse of the civilization. So good job, Katniss. Good job, rebels. The capital I won't really defend because they were pretty fucking horrible. But they were really kind of the only thing that was keeping the system going. With their destruction, things are pretty much dead at this point. Anyways, guys, this is Argent Templar signing out.